Here's an interesting question or riddle. Depending on who you talk to, they can be interchangeable. One can give you information, the other can confuse you. So, what do all these entities have in common? Writer and protege Mark Dice. Conspiracy X Factor Alex Jones. Osama bin Laden. The Russian government. The United Kingdom Parliament and Monarchy. The United States government. Aliens and alien technology. Milton William Cooper is their connection. He's a man of many talents. One time, naval intelligence, evolving into podcaster, investigative journalist, and freedom fighter. His crowning achievement would be the conspiracy textbook of sorts, Behold a Pale Horse. I will use all of my intelligence and logic and all mainframe multimedia resources to look at all angles, analyze all the information as we look to decode the Cooper Matrix. Welcome to the real world. Actually, welcome to the Cooper Matrix. Welcome to the real world is a line from one of my all-time favorite movies, The Matrix, a big inspiration for this show, of course. Now, what you just saw is an example of a cloaking device or cloaking technology. One of the many examples of possible advanced technology or maybe even alien technology that's been hidden from us for decades. And it kind of creates a mirage situation where a mirage normally is depicted as creating a belief that something is there when nothing's there. But it can also make you believe that nothing is there when everything is staring right in front of you. Now, the Cooper Matrix is definitely not an audible, but it's also not a spin or a treatment to try to show William Cooper as the one, necessarily. What it will show is that by reading his words, we will take and analyze all the information and show how his information is plain and directly predicting what is happening in the world right now in today's society. So, what I'm also going to show you how much weight and how much power this book is coming with, the book being Behold a Pale Horse, is a map, a family tree of sorts of what comprises the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Connection. This is what makes up what people call today the Bilderberg Group. I will take as much time as I can so that you can see clearly the information and the names. But I can only take so long with that as we have so much more information to cover. So without further ado, now that we're back, oh, we're in a different view now. I'll explain that. But first, a little history on William Cooper and how we got here. Well, I mean, it's simple enough early on. William Cooper, Milton William Cooper, started out like any other all American kid. I'm in the world, growing up, doing this thing, wanted to serve his country, decided to go into the Navy, and found that he had a relatively quick rise and right up to naval intelligence. Immediately getting into the upper echelon of the of government information and military information, and it kind of left him befuddled until he thought back and realized that it may have been his association as an early teen with a group called the De Molay Society, and which may have given him, excuse me, the key to getting into that upper echelon of government and military information. Now, for those who may not be familiar with the name De Molay, it is said that person De Molay is said to have been one of the early crafters of what would be known as the Illuminati. So moving right along, of course, it was at one point, as he alleged in one of his stories, that he was on one of the ships doing a patrol, at which he saw a device, a craft, come out of the water after the water swirled, emitting a hole, at which the craft rose from out of that hole, lifted off, and flew away, and with a great amount of speed. He, of course, was threatened with being taken away, having his retirement tenure taken away, money, rankings, and even being brought up on charges if he spoke about this to anyone at that time. But of course, as we know, it only held for so long, as he could not hide the information that he continued to see. But, excuse me, and in this fun fact, the connection to my title shot, in which you see a very old picture of someone seemingly in the military, where it shows the Cooper Matrix. This is actually William Cooper on a patrol. On a ship. I'm on a patrol boat, doing his usual duties, which I felt like was a great connection to his story. I mean, showing possibly exactly what he was doing when he seen that either alien technology or well advanced technology that they didn't want us to know about at that point. So here we are. Time goes on. He pretty much looks into other information, starts finding out things, connecting with different people, compiling things, and his life's work will go into what you see, which brings us to the new view. I'm in a smaller view, so you can see me still talking and interacting, and you can also read with me as I go through Behold a Pale Horse, the greatest life's work here. So without further ado, as I like to say, let's get started. Hopefully we can see, but again, folks, if you want to get in there, you don't want to get too fully in there, but let's just see how it works. Let's get started. Okay, let's be official. Let's be official here. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. Chapter 1, as promised. So here we are. The Illuminati's Declaration of War upon the People of America. Above title added by William Cooper. Okay, the author's note, because he likes to make sure that he lets you know that, especially with other information that he's compiled, he wants to be able to explain the different contexts to the situation. That again, he wants to show you it's not all him. He's not just some Svengali that knows all this information. He does the investigations, he connects with people and sources, and he does what he needs to do, and he puts the pieces together, just like any good investigative journalist does. But let's just keep it going. I read top secret documents which explain that Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is a doctrine adopted by the Policy Committee of the Bilderberg Group during its first known meeting in 1954. A copy found in 1969 was in the possession of Naval Intelligence. The following document, dated 1979, was found on July 7, 1986, in an IBM copier that had been purchased at a surplus sale. Top Secret, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, an introductory programming manual, operations research. Technical Manual, TM-SW7905.1. Welcome aboard. This publication marks the 25th anniversary of the Third World War, called the Quiet War, being conducted using subjective biological warfare fought with silent weapons. This book contains an introductory description of this war, its strategies and weaponry. May 1979, hashtag 74-1120. Security. It is patently impossible to discuss social engineering or the automation of a society, i.e., the engineering of social automation systems, silent weapons on a national scale, on national or worldwide scale, without implying extensive objectives of social control and destruction of human life, i.e., slavery and genocide. I'm going to try it this way too. This manual is in itself an analog declaration of intent. Such a writing must be secured from public scrutiny. Otherwise, it might be recognized as a technically formal declaration of domestic war. Furthermore, whenever any person or group of persons in a position of great power and without full knowledge and consent of the public uses such knowledge and methodology for economic conquest, it must be understood that a state of domestic warfare exists between said person or group of persons and the public. The solution of today's problems requires an approach which is ruthlessly candid and no agonizing over religious, moral, or cultural values. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at human society with cold objectivity and yet analyze and discuss your observations and conclusions with others of similar intellectual capacity without a loss of discretion or humility. Such virtues are exercised in your own best interest. Do not deviate from them. Okay, author's note, William Cooper. All above emphases are mine, as are those in the following two sections, and including bracketed additions throughout. I do recognize this document based upon the document's own admission as a formal declaration of war by the Illuminati upon the citizens of the United States of America. I acknowledge that a state of war exists and has existed between the citizens of the United States of America and the Illuminati aggressor. Based upon this recognition, I present to you that the peaceful citizens of this nation are fully justified in taking whatever steps may be necessary, including violence, to identify, counterattack, and destroy the enemy. I base this statement upon the God-given right of any peaceful people to defend themselves against attack and destruction by any enemy waging war against them. I cite principles outlined in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States of America, and the fully recognized and acknowledged historical precedents that have served as the justification for the destruction of tyrants. Silent historical introduction. Silent weapon technology has evolved from operations research, OR, a strategic and tactical methodology developed under military management, Eisenhower, in England during World War II. The original purpose of operations research was to study the strategic and tactical problems of air and land defense with the objective of effective use of limited military resources against foreign enemies, i.e., logistics. It was soon recognized by those in positions of power, the Council on Foreign Relations, that the same methods might be useful for totally controlling a society, but better tools were necessary. Okay. Social engineering, the analysis of and automation of a society, requires the correlation of great amounts of constantly changing economic information. So basically, folks, what he wants you to know once again, so that you don't think it's just some stylized novel that he's writing, he wants you to know that some of this information was found information. But also at the same time, he wants you to also be able to recognize when he is basically bringing hyperbole into the narration that maybe that person didn't quite put that there, but he wants to make sure it's there so you can see, so you can really get the emphasis and really have it sit with you. Well, well, let's get back to it, and maybe just bring this in a little closer if we could, just so I can get a better hold on this. So let's continue. All right. So a high-speed computerized. Let's just get back some. All right. So a high-speed computerized data processing system was necessary, which could race ahead of the society and predict when society would arrive for capitulation. Relay computers were too slow, but the electronic computer invented in 1946 by J. Presper Eckert and John W. Mauchly, filled the bill. The next breakthrough was the development of the simplex method of linear programming in 1947 by the mathematician George B. Dantzig. Then in 1948, the transistor, invented by J. Bardeen, W. H. Brattain, and W. Shockley, promised great expansion of the computer field by reducing space and power requirements. With these three inventions under their direction, those in positions of power strongly suspected that it was possible for them to control the whole world with the push of a button. Immediately, the Rockefeller Foundation got in on the ground floor by making a 4-year grant to Harvard College, funding the Harvard Economic Research Project for the study of the structure of the American economy. 1 year later, in 1949, the United States Air Force joined in. In 1952, the original grant period terminated and a high-level meeting of the elite, or the Illuminati, was held to determine the next phase of social operations research. The Harvard Project had been very fruitful, as as is borne out of the publication of some of its results in 1953, suggesting the feasibility of economics or social engineering. Studies in the Structure of the American Economy, copyright 1953, by Wasley Lonteef, International Sciences Press Incorporated, White Plains, New York. This was of course, the credit given to that. All right. Engineered in the last half of the decade of the 1940s, the new quiet war machine stood, so to speak, in sparkling gold-plated hardware on the showroom floor by 1954. With the creation of the Maser, in 1954, the promise of unlocking unlimited sources of fusion atomic energy from the heavy hydrogen in seawater and the consequent availability of unlimited social power was a possibility only decades away. The combination was irresistible. The Quiet War was quietly the Quiet War was quietly declared by the international elite, the Bilderberg Group, at a meeting held in 1954. Although the silent weapons system was nearly exposed 13 years later, the evolution of the new weapon system has never suffered any major setbacks. The volume marks the 25th This volume marks the 25th anniversary of the beginning of the Quiet War. Already, this domestic war has had many victories on many fronts throughout the world. In 1954, it was well recognized by those in positions of authority that it was only a matter of time, only a few decades, before the general public would be able to grasp and upset the cradle of power, for the very elements of the new silent weapon technology were as accessible for a public utopia as they were for providing a private utopia. The issue of primary concern of that of dominance revolved around the subject of energy sciences. That was political introduction, by the way. Energy. Energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. Natural science is the study of all the sources and control of natural energy, and social science, theoretically expressed as economics, is the study of the sources of and control of social energy. Both are bookkeeping systems. Therefore, mathematics is the primary energy science. And the bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. All science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge. The end is control. The end always justifies the means. Beyond this remains only one issue: who will be the beneficiary? In 1954, this was the issue of primary concern. Although the so called moral issues were raised, in view of the law of natural selection, it was agreed that a nation or a world of people who will not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence. Such people are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. Consequently, in the interest of future world order, peace, and tranquility, it was decided to privately wage a quiet war against the American public with an ultimate objective of permanently shifting the natural and social energy, which is wealth, of the undisciplined and irresponsible many into the hands of the self disciplined, responsible, and worthy few. In order to implement this objective, it was necessary to create, secure, and apply new weapons, which, as it turned out, were a class of weapons so subtle and sophisticated in their principle of operation and public appearance as to earn themselves the name silent weapons. In conclusion, the objective of the economic research as conducted by magnates of capital banking and the industries of commodities, goods, and services is the establishment of an economy which is totally predictable and manipulable. In order to achieve a totally predictable economy, the low class elements of society must be brought under total control, i.e., housebroken, trained, and assigned a yoke and long term social duties from a very early age before they have an opportunity to question the propriety of the matter. So, folks, we're getting we're starting to get right into chapter one, which I'm glad that I did this because it's giving me a moment of pause to realize that right from chapter one is where we really should start. I felt in my own way, which is why I said no spin this time, is that I felt like, maybe we should start at another chapter, a further down chapter, and then work from different directions. No. Starting from chapter one shows you how everything is formatted, the foundation of it, and what grows from there. He did a great job. It's his book. He did a great job doing it. So, and where are we with this? Just in case. I don't want to micromanage the reading because I know a certain level of intelligence does connect to those that are actually will watch this and are interested and have knowledge of conspiracy and of William Cooper. So I just want to say for those maybe just want to be sure and confirm that what they're saying is right now is that basically in the 40s heading into the 50s that they constructed a supercomputer that would be more efficient, need less space, and that would be able to detect through algorithms. They were already dealing with algorithms way before then, and even how to predict what we were going to do, how we'll react to certain things, how we'll move in certain ways, how certain things or stimuli might get us to move, or make decisions that would benefit them or would benefit their overall plan, and that would confirm their hypothesis from the very beginning. So the supercomputer would basically push these things forward, and it basically make sure that as long as no one in the public is smart enough to realize what's being done to them, then they'll be able to completely benefit off of using the American public as simply like water, energy, nuclear power, coal, or whatever. Or, as the Matrix would put, batteries. Any form, all the forms of energy used to power a certain system, machine, device, plan, whatever. And there we are. So, in order to achieve such conformity, the lower class family unit must be disintegrated by a process of increasing preoccupation of the parents and the establishment of government operated daycare centers for the occupationally orphaned children. Let me do that again. I am so sorry. In order to achieve such conformity, the lower class family unit must be disintegrated by a process of increasing preoccupation of the parents and the establishment of government operated daycare centers for the occupationally orphaned children. The quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the mote of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to manipulating some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. Now, I'm repeating this again because as an African American man, I really think that we need to give pause to this and just really take a moment and just really. So let me just read this again. The quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the mote of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior class is and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little, if any, hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to manipulating some measure of social order, peace, and tranquility for the ruling upper class. So basically, folks, I can definitely tell you this, that as an African American man growing up in Newport News, Virginia, I graduated high school at the threshold of the new millennium, having very little knowledge of coding, computer programs, just a very pedestrian knowledge of computers when I came out of high school. And it was because of the public school, their curriculum, their structure, that that basically helped that along. That stifled my growth as an individual because of that. So it's just a lot. That just goes to show you right there the proof that I even had a coworker, was a manager of a place where I work, where he told me that he was definitely getting computer programming education and knowledge when he was in high school. Absolutely. Like it was just like it's not even a thing of like having to ask for having to, it was sort of a part of the curriculum. And I think that the Newport News school system felt that they let a lot of us down, and that's why the school that I graduated from, Heritage High School, became a STEM school. That those who wanted that education, that programming, of course, STEM being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, those who want that training can get that training, can get that knowledge in code while they're in high school. And this is the reason, I think the reason why is because they knew that they let us down, a lot of us down, for so many years before they made this adjustment. But let's keep it going. Descriptive introduction of the silent weapon. Trying to keep my face in the shot, folks, but we gotta make sure that we keep ourselves right on target, because this information I'm telling you, let's go. Everything that is expected from an ordinary weapon is expected from a silent weapon by its creators, but only in its own manner of junctioning. It shoots situations instead of bullets, propelled by data processing instead of a chemical reaction or explosion, originating from bits of data instead of grains of gunpowder, from a computer instead of a gun, operated by a computer programmer instead of a marksman, under the orders of a banking magnate instead of a military general. It makes no obvious explosive noises, causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does not obviously interfere with anyone's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with daily social life, i.e., excuse me, i.e., unmistakable to a trained observer, one who knows what to look for. It's getting a little dark in here, folks. I do apologize. Maybe we need to turn on the lights, but it's just, we're going to keep going here. The public cannot comprehend this weapon, and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by a weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong. Isn't that the truth? But because of the technical nature of the silent weapon, they cannot express their feeling in a rational way or handle the problem with intelligence. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. When a silent weapon is applied gradually, the public adjusts, adapts to its presence, and learns to tolerate its encroachment on their lives, and until the pressure or the psychological via economic becomes too great. Oh, right. And they crack up. Well, therefore, the silent weapon is a type of biological warfare. It attacks the vitality, options, and mobility of the individuals of a society by knowing, understanding, manipulating, and attacking their sources of natural and social energy, and their physical, mental, and emotional strengths and weaknesses. Theoretical introduction. Give me control over a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, 1743 to 1812. Today's silent weapons technology is an outgrowth of a simple idea, discovered and succinctly expressed and effectively applied, discovered, succinctly expressed, and effectively applied by the quoted Mr. Mayer Amschel Rothschild. Mr. Rothschild discovered the missing passive component of economic theory known as the economic inductance. He, of course, did not think of his discovery in these 20th century terms, and to be sure, mathematical analysis had to wait for the second industrial revolution, the rise of the theory of mechanics and electronics, and finally the invention of the electronic computer before it could be effectively applied in the control of the world economy. Let's keep it going, folks. Stay with my face here. In the study of energy systems, there always appear three elementary concepts. There are potential energy, kinetic energy, and energy dissipation. And corresponding to these concepts, there are three idealized, essentially pure physical counterparts called passive components. 1. In the science of physical mechanics, the phenomenon of potential energy is associated with a physical property called elasticity or stiffness and can be represented by a stretched spring. In electronic science, potential energy is stored in a capacitor instead of a spring. This property is called capacitance instead of elasticity or stiffness. 2. In the science of physical mechanics, the phenomenon of kinetic energy is associated with a physical property called inertia or mass and can be represented by a mass or a flywheel in motion. In electronic science, kinetic energy is stored in an inductor, in a magnetic. I apologize. A lot of talking here, a lot of reading. In electronic science, kinetic energy is stored in an inductor, in a magnetic field, instead of a mass. This property is called inductance instead of inertia. In the science of physical mechanics, the phenomenon of energy Dissipation is associated. Here we go, folks. Sorry. Okay, getting a little dark in here. Let's just get the light on real quick, folks. One moment. I mean, we do understand that there's an element of danger here, but I mean, we still want to be able to see what we're looking at. So let's just give this a shot here. Okay. Dissipation is associated with a physical property called friction. Called friction or resistance, and can be represented by a dashpot or other device which, which converts system energy into heat. In electronic science, dissipation of energy is performed by an element called a resistor, called either a resistor or a conductor. The term resistor being the one generally used to express the concept of friction, and the term conductor being generally used to describe a more ideal device, wire, employed to convey electronic energy efficiently from one location to another. The property of resistance or conductor is measured as either resistance or conductance reciprocals. In economics, these three energy concepts are associated with economic capacitance: capital, money, stock, inventory, investments in building and durables, etc. Economic conductance: goods, production flow coefficients. 3. Economic inductance: services, the influence of the population of industry on Jesus. Okay, here we go. 3. Economic inductance: services, the influence of the population of industry on output. All of the mathematical developed, all of the, okay, here we go. All of the mathematical theory developed in the study of one energy system, e.g. mechanics, electronics, etc., can be immediately applied in the study of any other energy system, economics. I apologize about that, folks. It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading, a lot of words to get through, a lot of things to pass through. This is real. I wanted to be real. There is production here. There's professionalism here, especially for me, but I wanted to be real. A real reading from a real person that really wants to dig into this. But there is production here. But like I said, this right here, this is the real part. I always got to inject some realness in here, and this is real. Sometimes your voice gets a little tied up, and you got to get through it. You tough it out. I will push through and tough it out. Mr. Rothschild's energy discovery. What Mr. Rothschild had discovered was the basic principle of power, influence, and control over people as applied to economics. That principle is, when you assume the appearance of power, people soon give it to you. Mr. Rothschild had discovered the currency or deposit loan accounts had the required appearance of power that could be used to induce people. That's of course William Cooper's emphasis. Inductance with the people corresponding to a magnetic field into surrendering their real wealth in exchange for a promise of greater wealth instead of real compensation. They would put up real collateral in exchange for a loan of promissory notes. Mr. Rothschild found that he could issue more notes than he had backing for, so long as he had someone's stock of gold as a persuader to show to his customers. Mr. Rothschild loaned his promissory notes to individuals and to governments. These would create overconfidence. Then he would make money scarce, tighten control of the system, and collect the collateral through the obligation of contracts. The cycle was then repeated. These pressures could be used to ignite a war. Then he would control the availability of currency to determine who would win the war. That government, which agreed to give him control of his economic system, got his support. Collection of debts was guaranteed by economic aid to the enemy of the debtor. The profit derived from this economic methodology made Mr. Rothschild all the more able to extend his wealth. He found that the public Public greed would allow currency to be printed by government order beyond the limits. That's again William Cooper's emphasis. Inflation of backing in precious metals or the production of goods and services, gross national product, the GNP. Apparent capital as paper conductor. In this structure, credit presented as a pure element called currency has the appearance of capital, but is in fact negative capital. This man, again, folks, is around the 80s heading into the 90s, and here he is again. Here's somebody gonna let you know. In this structure, credit cards, credit presented as a pure element called currency has the appearance of capital, but is in fact negative capital. Hence, it has the appearance of service, but is in fact indebtedness or debt. It is therefore an economic inductance instead of an economic capacitance. And if balanced in no other way, will be balanced by the negation of population, war, genocide. Total goods and services represent real capital called the gross national product, and currency may be printed up to this level and still represent economic capacitance. But currency printed beyond this level is subtractive, represents the introduction of economic inductance, and constitutes notes of indebtedness. War is therefore the balancing of the system by killing the true creditors, the public, which we have taught to exchange true value for inflated currency, and falling back on whatever is left of the resources of nature and regeneration of those resources. Mr. Rothschild discovered that currency, let's get it back up here, that currency gave him the power to rearrange the economic structure to his own advantage, to shift inductance, the economic inductance, to those economic positions which would encourage the greatest economic instability and oscillation. The final key to economic control had to wait until there was sufficient data and high-speed computing equipment to keep close watch on the economic oscillations created by price shocking and excess paper energy credits, paper inductance, inflation. Like, by the way, like every once in a while, they want to raise the gas prices and claim it's this reason, it's that reason why they're, it's our issues with this particular country overseas while the oil's going up. It's the COVID that's going, the supply chain that's making it go up. Every once in a while, they raise those prices way up to shock the public to see how they'll react to something like this. What will they do? Will they just keep accepting it, or will they figure out different ways, you know what I'm saying, to basically save money or make other things happen for themselves, and then after a while, the prices go back down to an acceptable level? Just letting you know, again, folks, the meaning of this is to let you know how this man's actual words are playing out, how this man's actual words and information are playing out into today's society. The aviation field, breakthrough. The aviation field provided the greatest evolution in economic engineering by way of the mathematical theory of shock testing. In this process, a projectile is fired from an airframe on the ground, and the impulse of the recoil is monitored by vibration transducers connected to the airframe wired to chart recorders. By studying the echoes or reflections of the recoil impulse in the airframe, it is possible to discover critical vibrations in the structure of the airframe, which either vibrations of the engine or aeolian vibrations of the wings, or a combination of the two, might reinforce, resulting in a resonant self-destruction of the airframe in flight as an aircraft. From the standpoint of engineering, this means the strengths and weaknesses of the structure of the airframe in terms of vibrational energy can be discovered and manipulated. Application in economics. To use this method of airframe shock testing in economic engineering, the prices of commodities are shocked and the public consumer reactions is monitored. The resulting echoes of the economic shock are interpreted theoretically by computers, and the psychoeconomic structure of the economy is thus discovered. It is by this process that partial, differential, and difference matrices are discovered that define the family household and make possible its evaluation as an economic industry. Dissipative consumer structure. Then the response of the household to future shocks can be predicted and manipulated, and society becomes a well regulated animal with its reins under the control of a sophisticated computer regulated social energy bookkeeping system. Eventually, every individual element of the structure comes under computer control through a knowledge of personal preferences. Such knowledge, guaranteed by a computer association of consumer preferences, Universal Product Code (UPC), zebra stripe pricing codes on packages, which identify consumers identified via association with the use of a credit card, and later a permanent tattooed body number invisible under normal ambient illumination. The economic model. The Harvard Economic Research Project 1948, and I can only assume still ongoing, was an extension of World War II operations research. Its purpose was to discover the science of controlling an economy. At first, the American economy, and then the world economy. It was felt that with sufficient mathematical foundation and data, it would be nearly as easy to predict and control the trend of an economy as to predict and control the trajectory of a projectile. Such has proven to be the case. Moreover, the economy has been transformed into a guided missile on target. The immediate aim of the Harvard Project was to discover the economic structure, what forces change that structure, how the behavior of the structure can be predicted, and how it can be manipulated. What was needed was a well-organized knowledge of the mathematical structures and interrelationships of investment, production, distribution, and consumption. Wow. Whew, folks. This is getting deep, and we still have a few more pages to go. So we're just going to take a quick moment. Of course, we're going to edit the work so you don't have to wait too long for the rest of the information. But this again, folks, this is real. We will be back with the next cut.